In this video, we're going to talk about the nervous system. Really important part of the body that we need to understand as trainers. Really, when we start training somebody from the beginning or make any type of motor changes or changes in a program, it's really initially the nervous system that we're training. So it's important for us to understand exactly how that works. So as you're probably familiar with, the nervous system is a communication network within the human body, and basically it allows us to gather information about our internal and external environments, process and interpret that information, and respond. So in other words, we're constantly responding to things that are happening outside of our body, and we're constantly responding to things that are happening inside our body. We're obviously very aware of the things that are happening around us, somewhat, but oftentimes there's things happening all throughout our body internally that we absolutely don't know that we're responding to. The body just takes care of itself that way. So the nervous system basically is broken down into three parts. We have the sensory part of the nervous system, which is the ability of the nervous system to sense changes in either the internal or external environment. We have the integrative portion of the nervous system, which is the ability of the nervous system to analyze and interpret the sensory information to allow for proper decision making, producing the appropriate response. So in other words, the integrative portion is just our brain and our spinal cord. Information constantly going up from the internal, external environment. Brain's the big head honcho, making the decision about where things what needs to happen in the body, and it sends that information out. And if it's a motor response that we need, muscular response, it goes back out to carry out that response. All right. So I look at it as like kind of an air traffic control situation where you constantly have things happening around you, and the brain is the main controller, constantly having to make the information about who's coming in and who's going out. So it has to have the information coming in, sent up to the control tower, and then the control tower decides who gets to land, who gets to fly, all that kind of good stuff. So here's the breakdown of the nervous system. The nervous system is broken down into the peripheral nervous system and the central nervous system. The central nervous system is just the brain and the spinal cord. That's all you need to know. That is your air traffic control tower. Basically all the information coming up, brain making the decision, and then sending out the response or the directive back through the spinal cord. Peripheral nervous system is more of our sensory nervous system. So it's sensing the things that are happening around us and within us and getting that information to the brain. Also, making sure that what's happening on the inside of our body stays in homeostasis or in perfect balance. The peripheral nervous system is further broken down into the autonomic and the somatic nervous systems. So the autonomic nervous system controls the internal activities of organs and glands, so stuff that we're not aware of, we can't make conscious decisions about it. But the somatic part of the peripheral nervous system is more of our motor control, things that we are more aware of, or we can be under voluntary control. We decide what to do. The autonomic nervous system is further broken down into the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system, and we're going to go through each one of these in detail. So as I said before, the central nervous system is broken down just into the brain and the spinal cord. That's all you need to remember for that. Then the peripheral nervous system is basically contains 12 cranial nerves coming out of the head, and 31 pairs of spinal nerves that branch out from the brain and spinal cord, as well as all of our sensory receptors. So all our receptors that respond to light, touch, pain, anything like that. And I have a slide on that in a couple minutes here. So the function of the peripheral nervous system is to provide a connection for the nervous system to activate different bodily organs, such as muscles, so whether that's internal or external, and also to relay information from bodily organs back to the brain, providing a constant update of the relation between the body and the environment. So in other words, everything that's like happening in your digestive system is just a constant communication between your brain and all the systems involved in your digestive system. But we're not really aware of that. We're not controlling that. So, somatic nervous system, just a little simple slide. I'm just showing you over on the left. I don't have a pointer. So basically it just controls our skeletal muscles. It's all the somatic nervous system is involved in, voluntary movement. Alright, so we talked about how the autonomic nervous system, the peripheral nervous system is broken down into the somatic and the autonomic. So let's talk about the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system controls your heart rate, force of contraction, respiration rate, digestion, blood pressure and flow, and fuel mobilization, which you're going to learn about in a lot of detail in another video. It is further broken down into the sympathetic branch, which is the fight or flight system, which I'm sure that you're aware of, and then the parasympathetic branch returns the body back to normal. So the sympathetic nervous system is basically our protective mechanism. Whenever we're scared or we're in danger, it prepares our body to either fight or to run away, and it basically makes sure that we have the bodily responses that we have to make sure that, to make a decision about what we're going to do when we're fearful. But the parasympathetic branch is always the portion of the nervous system that's saying, it's okay, let's get back to normal, calm down, everything's fine. So after we've been through a fearful situation where our heart rate goes up and our blood pressure goes up, the parasympathetic nervous system brings everything back to normal. Calms the heart rate, calms everything. So in many instances, they kind of have opposing effects. So on this slide, you can see some of the effects and noticeable things you'll affect during a fight or flight system, as your pupils might dilate, your mouth goes dry, neck and shoulders tense up, heart pumps faster, chest pains, you see all those that are here. Basically everything you feel when you're frightened. The hidden effects, things maybe you wouldn't really know, is your brain gets body for action, decides which hormones needs to be released, all that kind of good stuff. Adrenaline is released for fight or flight, so you know how it is, you get all pumped up with adrenaline. Blood pressure rises. Liver releases glucose to provide energy for muscles. It's almost like the body, in some ways, I've read in some articles, that it's preparing itself for starvation in a way, in case you get into a situation where your body can't take care of itself. Releases the stress hormone, which is cortisol, and it helps, which actually depresses the immune system. So, and one interesting thing that we don't think about with exercise is that when we start a new exercise or we start something that's stressful to the body, that's actually, you're engaging your fight or flight system during exercise. So the sympathetic nervous system is involved anytime we're starting to do some kind of new or aggressive exercise. Really involved. Parasympathetic nervous system. Oh, this is just another slide, I apologize. So this shows you kind of the role, once again, just like the other slide. This goes a little bit more detail and shows you what the parasympathetic response might be. So while the sympathetic nervous system is responding and the pupils are dilating and heart rate's raising and we're breathing heavily and all that kind of good stuff, the parasympathetic nervous system, what its job is to bring things back to normalcy. Slows the heart rate back down, relaxes the lungs, constricts the bronchi, stimulates digestion, releases all this stuff on the inside just to bring things back to normal. So basically, that's how we maintain homeostasis, is with our autonomic nervous system, right? It's basically constantly putting our body, the parasympathetic nervous system is always trying to keep us in balance. We've got acid levels in the body and we have all sorts of things that, if they aren't calmed back down, are very harmful to us. So the flight or fight, that's sympathetic activity dominates. When you're in a situation where there's a flight or fight response, where you're frightened or you're scared or you're doing some kind of intense exercise, you've got the sympathetic nervous system dominating. When we're just resting and digesting or recovering from a flight or fight response, the parasympathetic activity dominates. So they're both in factor, obviously, because we have to maintain some kind of balance, but depending on the situation determines which system is more dominant. So, now that we understand how those nervous systems work, how does that information relay, right? How is that information getting from the environment to the brain, or from the internal environment up to the brain and then back out again? And that's through a neuron. That's basically our functional unit of the nervous system. And then one of my other videos will go into more detail about this, but I want to make sure that you understand how does this all happen. So, we have 3 types of neuron, or classifications, I guess I should say, of neurons determined by the direction of the nerve impulses. Very important to remember this for any test that you have. Sensory neurons transmit afferent nerve impulses from receptors to the brain or spinal cord. So in other words, our sensory neurons are constantly sensing our environment, and they transmit that information from the environment to the brain and spinal cord via afferent nerve impulses, A-F-F-E-R-E-N-T. Motor neurons, they transmit efferent nerve impulses from the brain or spinal cord to the effector sites, such as muscle or organs. In other words, they deliver the appropriate response. Sense the information, those nerves send it up to the transmit tower. Brain makes a decision and then sends out the motor neurons to actually deliver whatever the communication is. So afferent, A, toward the brain and spinal cord. Efferent, exit the brain and spinal cord. And another way I remember efferent is that they go to the effector organs, whichever organs are being affected, whether that's muscle, internal organs, or whatever. And then we have interneurons, which transmit nerve impulses from one neuron to another. And I'm not going to get into a great amount of detail on that. So putting it all together, this little slide I thought kind of showed we've got the central nervous system, we've got our internal environment, we've got our external environment. We constantly have those sensory neurons bringing information to the central nervous system. And then we have the autonomic nervous system, which is going to take care of the things that we can't control voluntarily. And then we have the sensory or the somatic nervous system, where we have a little more, we have voluntary control over the response there. So motor neurons and sensory neurons constantly working back and forth, producing the information that we need to get to the brain and spinal cord, making that decision and sending the information back out. Now we have some more details that we won't get into pretty much in this class, but we also have things such as reflexes when we respond to something quick, like something painful and something hot. But we're not going to get into a lot of detail there, but do understand that there's another process for that, essentially. And that's it. I think this slide kind of just is another overall wrap-up of the way to look at it. You've got your sensory information, receptors in your skin primarily, and then we have the information from the motor portion, or the somatic control, going to the muscles. And that's it.